the end of it all, Kenyans would come to the conclusion that BBI and the courts have been nothing short of fantastic television. From the High Court to the Court of Appeal, and today, the Supreme Court of 2017. Well, the Supreme Court was in session today, decisively claiming the life of the Building Bridges Initiative, BBI, a politically powerful but legally deficient process aimed at amending the Constitution of Kenya. So, 7 judges, 7 issues. We have no option but to spend the show tonight assessing the BBI in all its 7 directions. And on the final word tonight, my take, Jamila's memo, Gashuri's punchline, and Kaikai's kicker have all been put together in what the Supreme Court would call a consolidated petition. This is NewsGang.
The conclusion I reach should be apparent on the first limb of this ground is that the President, as a matter of fact, commenced and spearheaded the process from its inception and only passed on the baton to the 2 co-chairpersons when it was too late in the day and beyond recall, that the President is ineligible to directly or indirectly initiate a constitutional amendment to the Constitution under any of the prescribed circumstances, that he cannot act as an ordinary citizen because he is not, and at the same time claim to be exercising executive authority. He cannot, in the circumstances of Chapter 16, run with the hare and hunt with the hounds.
Wilson Mushora is our sign language gangster tonight. And let's begin where we shall. Hashtag is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya. We are looking forward to your views on this conversation tonight. Like I said, let's begin at the beginning. And with the person who was actually there and present all day. It's been a long day for you, Shuri. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, but what a day it's been. So, you know, we'll get to the outcome in a moment that now, you know, sort of everybody knows about. But just set the scene for us. What was it like in there? You had, you know, firsthand, there's some things you would see and experience that many of us perhaps didn't get to do on television.
First, I took note of how the lawyers representing various parties arrived at the Supreme Court. You could tell some anxiety, you could tell some tension, a little whispers here and there. I could see a few congregating in small groups discussing the possible outcome of the judgment, or what the judgment would be. And I tried to speak to a number of them, and some would give you an indicator of how they expected the judgment to be. Of course, off record. Some were saying a few issues may be upheld, a few issues may be allowed. And true to their predictions, that was the situation. But now, the ultimate question was, which one issue, or 2 issues, or 3 issues will salvage the BBI process or sink it completely? And there were all manner of speculation. Some were saying it will be 5-2, some it will be 6-1. You know, the normal rhetoric around such a place. But you could tell there was no assurance from either of the team that this is the way it would go. But finally, speaking to a few of them also, they were also keen to see how the Supreme Court would explain its judgment. Bearing in mind, what we saw at the High Court were very detailed judgments. At the Court of Appeal, the same. So the expectation was that whichever way the decision goes, what will be the explanation of the judges of the Supreme Court? So I could tell the tension. Now, contrast that to what happened immediately the session was over and the judgment was done. You could see the petitioners or the appellants, the Attorney General's team, the BBI team. You could see them trying to, you know, rationalize the judgment. It was not a bad loss. It was
it was a fairly good win.
Yeah, you know, claiming what you would say moral victory. Like, We presented 7 issues, 5 were granted, only 2 were rejected, gives an opportunity for future attempts. But on the other hand, the people who, the lawyers who represented those opposed to the BBI process, you could see the jubilation in their, you know, even the fist bumps, the high fives, the hugs here and there, that they were waiting for just one issue that would sink the process. So that is what I observed there.
Okay, and it's interesting because whilst the Supreme Court has actually sat before, Linus, you know, as constituted currently, I believe, with the Muratetu case. Is that right? But this would qualify as the biggest task at hand for the Supreme Court, having 2 new members, Chief Justice Martha Koome and Justice William Oko, who just, you know, come up from the Court of Appeal. You know, what was that like? Could you speak to us about that? Also, the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, typically would the Chief Justice not come last with giving her judgment, or what's the protocol there?
Right. The protocol is not written anywhere. It's just a tradition in the court that you start giving the judgment starting with the youngest judge in the bench, and it would be the age of legal practitioners is measured by when were you admitted to the role of advocates, and I think, if I'm not wrong, it would have been Justice Lenaola to start. Last time in the petition on the presidential elections, it was Lenaola that started because of that little unwritten protocol. But this is Martha Koome's court, and she is coming with her own new style. And there are a few things that really stand out. One, the timekeeping is spot on. They started at exactly 4 minutes past 9 o'clock. So it's not the 9 of 10 and 10 and 11 and all that. There is timekeeping, and we've seen the Martha Koome court keeping time. And then there's something that really should come out today, and that is the gap between the rumors peddled before such major rulings and actually the outcome. Because, I think Robert will give us some of those sound bites on the Supreme Court president pointing out and naming 2 prominent lawyers. Because if you go to the Twitter handles of Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, who is senior counsel, you would see that in the last few days, he's been casting aspersions, suggesting that the court will rule a certain way, almost actually saying that BBI is going to be revived by 5-2. Did you see those things? Which in the end, look at the judgment by these judges and look at the pain that they must bear by just reading what was out there compared to what they have actually decided. And I think, to me today, the main issue that came out is the need to uphold institutional dignity and respect. Something is happening in our courts that is worrying. When you see 2 senior lawyers like that, who will go out there, maybe in the name of freedom of expression, whatever, cast aspersions on judges, cast aspersions on an institution. It is very, very sad. And only in a week that we've seen another lawyer really engaging a magistrate in an altercation. It demeans the court. The court is a place of our final resort. And look at the totality of the decision made today by the judges. There's a lot of courage that has gone into this decision, because not long ago, and if Robert can just give us that soundbite on what President Uhuru Kenyatta said about BBI
during Jamhuri Day,
Jamhuri Day celebrations.
That provides for amendment of the Constitution, but the entire body.
And although it encountered some legal obstacles, I say again today that BBI is just a dream deferred. One day, someday, it will happen. Because just as the country cannot survive ethnic majoritarianism and exclusion, just in the same breath, it cannot survive unfair and skewed representation. This is a design defect, and we must fix it.
What really brought down BBI was the participation of President Uhuru Kenyatta, his involvement in initiating the process through the popular initiative. And I know there were 7 issues, but really only one would have been truly consequential for BBI. Had the court granted the appeal on issue number 2, basically the rest will be irrelevant. And I've seen the lawyers, and earlier on, both Francis and yourself, Yvonne, have spoken to Paul Mwangi and the teams, who are giving us as the silver side of things. Let's face some journalistic truth here. BBI is dead. Legally, it's dead. This is the highest it was going to go. The next appeal is maybe, I don't know if you can take this to the East African Court of Justice, or to the international courts out there. But in the Kenyan legal course, this is the end of the road. That's period. Now, I've seen celebration about these other clauses that were granted. And what it reminds me is, in Kenya, Kenyan politicians like talking in analogies of hunters and animals and all that. If I can borrow that analogy for a moment, Francis, then here it was an animal that was slaughtered. But what really the BBI appellants got today are the hooves and horns, not the meaty part of the deal. Because what they were looking for really is issue number 2. Issue number 2, had it been granted, would have kicked to life the whole BBI process, because what it would mean is everything that had happened in that initiative, including the going to the counties, it was passed by about 44 out of 47 counties, all that really would have been presumed back to life had the court determined that President Uhuru Kenyatta was acting lawfully by initiating the process.
In fact, Yvonne, what Chief Justice Martha Koome said, and I quote, is that the president cannot both be a player and an umpire in the amendment process. And Justice Ouko said, and I found that very amusing, he said the president cannot run with the hare and hunt with the hounds. He cannot act as an ordinary citizen because he's not, and still claim to exercise executive authority. I think that's one of the main issues that came out during today's ruling out of the 7 that we mentioned. We'll talk about the basic structure doctrine and all the others, but I think this was a big one because they said that the president cannot use a popular initiative to amend the constitution, saying that Article 257 does not apply to him as the president of the Republic of Kenya. It has to come from Wananchi. In fact, that analogy was used by CJ Kobe, saying it needs to start from the bottom, coming up, and that is what was ruled by the judges. And I think we keep talking about Article 257 of the constitution that they keep referring to when they're talking about this. An amendment to this constitution may be proposed by a popular initiative signed by at least 1 million registered voters. That is what it says. And then the 4 issues that she kept mentioning in her ruling, other than the million signatures, what else? Winning the support of more than half of the 47 county assemblies. These things did happen, but who initiated it? Yes, there were the 2 dissenting views by Justice Lenaola and Justice Njoki Ndung'u. Lenaola, Justice Lona saying the initiators were actually the 2 chairmen, Dennis Waweru and Junet Mohammed. And Justice Njoki Ndung'u saying as the president, he can't do it, acting on behalf of the people under Article 1 of the Constitution. But basically what Lina said is true. BBI is dead. And even if it had passed, it would not have been implemented any time before the coming elections. And I think that needs to be understood. But as it is out.
And that is the thing about, tying it to the political process, whichever way this was going to go, in court. It was obviously not going to happen between now and August the 9th. Even just the process of starting all over again, it took them, what, 4 months to even collect the signatures, and we're now 4 months to the election. I just want us to stay on that issue of the president and, you know, his ability to initiate the process, and hear from Justice William Oko, who talked about the president spearheading the process, and, you know, what Jamila was referring to. Let's hear Justice William Oko now on that.
The conclusion I reach should be apparent on the first limb of this ground is that the president, as a matter of fact, commenced and spearheaded the process from its inception and only passed on the baton to the two co-chairpersons when it was too late in the day and beyond recall, that the president is ineligible to directly or indirectly initiate a constitutional amendment to the Constitution under any of the prescribed circumstances, that he cannot act as an ordinary citizen because he is not, and at the same time claim to be exercising executive authority. He cannot, in the circumstances of Chapter 16, run with the hare and hunt with the hounds.
And in fact, there was another one that traced the genealogy of the BBI, the family tree, if you like.
From the great-grandfather. I
know, and that was interesting. But for me, and we'll try and get you that soundbite in a moment, but I think what was interesting was that they didn't just go towards saying that the president cannot initiate a constitutional amendment process through Article 257, but they went on to, in fact, say that the president himself was the initiator of the process, never mind the dissenting from the two. But Justice Martha Koome actually, you know, set it out very well and said, you know, he signed the petition, the communique in March 2018, that it was, you know, he did it in his capacity as president. In fact, I remember I was writing that down when she said it, that he, you know, wrote it and there was the seal, and the coat of arms, the seal of the presidency and the coat of arms. So it left no doubt about it. And also, I think there was also another judge on the Supreme Court who said, and he followed up the process with several Gazette notices, you know, of the same. So not just saying that a president cannot, but that this president actually did, and sort of saying that that was the issue, you know, with this process. And so seemingly then that, you know, the president got in his own way. And Francis, then many people ask, they had a battery of lawyers. There was, you know, no less than Paul Mwangi, you have the Attorney General, you've got the Solicitor General, you've got all of this advice. So what is happening within the executive? Is it A, are they getting bad advice? B, are they getting no advice? Or C, is nobody listening to the advice of these professionals?
Probably a combination of the three factors that you've mentioned. But I think more, there was this great assumption that this is a mega project that we will roll it over and it will be done. Actually, at the heart of this entire appeal, and this matter right from the High Court to the Court of Appeal and eventually at the Supreme Court, probably a lot of focus was on basic structure, doctrine, and all that. But from the onset, right from the High Court, there were two key issues that I figured out, and they have been carried over till the Supreme Court. Number one, the president's role in initiating the popular initiative. Number two, the creation of new constituencies, the 70 new constituencies. Why? Because was there any doubt that there was the president's hand in the BBI process? It was obvious. It was clear for everybody who saw it. Would you say there was heavy government investment and machinery in the BBI process? Most definitely there was. But you see, you have to understand this when you look back at the handshake of March 2018. Because the handshake was fashioned as a solution to long-standing historical issues that generate a contested election every 5 years. And so that this BBI process would be used as a solution to those long-standing historical issues. And who are the pioneers, the masterminds, the pushers of this discussion and the attempt to resolve it? The president and the former prime minister, the handshake partners of March 2018 at the footsteps of Harambee House. And so this, to a great extent, some would argue was a government project. And so the president's role in the BBI process cannot be underrated. It was evident for everybody to see it. And so how the judges were going to deal with this matter was at the heart of the entire process. Actually, Linus gave an example, an analogy of how people share the spoils. Guys getting hooves, the intestines and everything else. I compared with him another analogy. This was like a motor vehicle. You're claiming it. And then the judges are telling you, okay, fine, you can take it, but not without the engine and two of the wheels, the rear wheels.
Okay.
What can you do with that kind of a vehicle? For all intents and purposes, it's a shell. Because at the heart of this BBI process, the question of an expanded executive was pertinent. The question of representation was also pertinent. Actually, the greatest selling point for this document, especially in the Mount Kenya region and the populous regions, was representation, that this document, if passed, would create an extra 70 constituencies to address the areas that are populated. You know, the population question in representation, and thereafter, the question of resource sharing. So while the expanded executive and, you know, creation of positions was on one hand, there was also the other hand of representation and resource sharing. When you look at those two issues, who are the drivers of that narrative? The president and the former prime minister. And that explains why, no matter how much you rationalize the judgment today, I would say it's a loss for BBI.
All right, but Justice Njoki Ndung'u felt otherwise. She said anybody can be a prompter of the bill. So we've talked a lot about the majority decision on that one. But let's just listen to Justice Njoki Ndung'u with her dissenting view on this issue.
It is important to note also that Section 257 does not in any way specify who may move a constitutional amendment process by popular initiative. It does not contain an explicit bar against any person promoting a constitutional amendment by popular initiative. It specifically provides what actions the promoters are tasked with in order to begin and complete an amendment process, but it does not state who the promoters must be.
Yeah, and
it's interesting. She says that and says that there's no historical evidence that draft of the Constitution intend that the president be excluded from popular initiative amendment route, or that it be limited to a certain class of people to the exclusion of others. That's her argument. But it's so different from what the other judges were saying, because I compare that to what Justice Ouko said about the president being the initiator and then handing it over to the secretariat at some point. So she really used a good argument, saying that the president was elected by the people. It's all about the numbers and the fact that he holds that office kuserve wananchi, so he can delegated powers. Yes, exactly. So he can do it on behalf of wananchi. So she doesn't see why he cannot be the initiator of the process. But Yvonne, as we talk about that, I think one thing that they all agreed on unanimously when we talk about the president, the fact that he cannot be sued.
Yeah.
And that was unanimous, that the president in his capacity as the president of the Republic of Kenya cannot be sued. So for me, I look at it in terms of how interpretation of the law is done. You know, Yvonne, the law niyo moja, like this is what the law says, this article says this and that, but now it's up to interpretation. The same issue is being interpreted differently by 7 different people. Yeah, 5 of them have a different opinion in terms of they all agree, but they all had different reasons. And then you have 2 who dissent, and they say totally different things about the same article in the Constitution. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. Linus?
I think what the Supreme Court had to do today was to walk a very thin, fine line, and that is to try and strike a balance between the law and politics. And you can see that playing out, not just in what Njoki Ndung'u did today, but with also the introduction that went into Justice Martha Koome's remarks, where she, at length, and I think this was followed by the rest of the judges, I do not know how they put this together, but it sounds to me like there was a lot of what I would call lobbying and conversations between the judges on the issue of the basic structure doctrine, because they went really hard and the language is sounding very similar. They all tried to place the basic doctrine as far as possible from our context, saying it's a foreign context, foreign concept.
Except Justice Ibrahim.
Exhaust our internal resources before you go out there and all that. Then comes Justice Njokendungu, who basically took a different position from issue 1 to the last.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and she spoke at some point about leadership without authority and calling it an absurdity to have a president who cannot do certain things. But the same constitution also requires the president, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, to act in accordance with the constitution.
Right.
So there are no abstracts like we used to have before, where you are in authority. So and I mean, she would remember, and Kenyans would remember the terms of the first 2 presidents who would stand on the roadside and declare, "We've created a district, we've created a constituency," and things like that. Power is no longer that arbitrary. Authority is no longer that arbitrary. But I could see this was the balance between politics and the law. I could also see and sense a deliberate effort by the Supreme Court to give out some and take away others. And I think they knew very well, by ruling the way, giving a judgment the way they did on issue number 2, they knew that's the death blow, really. So you can afford to throw a few goodies here and there and pick something innocent like the basic structure doctrine. Because this argument will not be closed on the basic structure, because if you look at our constitution, the way we made it in 2010, and even the attempt to make it in 2005, you would see those four stages. So our judges in the superior courts, that's High Court and Court of Appeal, were not exactly really talking of India.
Yeah.
You're just picking an illustration that you can attach to our own context and say, but you know, this fits what we've done before, and especially how we wrote the Constitution of Kenya 2010. We all know very well there was civic education, very, very aggressive civic education exercise. We all remember there was public participation. There was a constituent assembly. You remember all those big cards in Bomas of Kenya.
Yes.
Martin Shikuku's showing you that he's delegate number 66 something, and things like that. That is exactly how we wrote the Constitution of Kenya 2010, without naming and saying it is the basic structure doctrine.
Yeah.
Then there is something else about the basic structure doctrine, and that is the clauses which we have that require us, if you want to change them, you have to go to the referendum.
Yeah.
The basic structure doctrine also talks about the constituent power belonging to the ordinary people, the Wanjiku. Now, Wanjiku, you can only reach Wanjiku through those 4 processes, especially public participation, which is in the Constitution also. And you will also talk about civic education, and also talk about a constituent assembly where you select some of them to come and discuss at Bomas of Kenya and present their views and all that. So I think the Supreme Court today used the basic structure doctrine as a shield to shield themselves from political missiles that come their way because of the decisions they have. So they chose the most harmless part. I've seen some worries here about, it opens the space for the amending of the Constitution, whichever way. The judgment nullifying the basic doctrine structure did not nullify Chapter 16 of the Constitution, which is where they caught the president and told him, no, you're not supposed to be in 257 at all. You're not supposed to be here. That was not the basic structure doctrine. That was our Constitution, meaning they still, whoever wants to change the Constitution must still act in accordance to the Constitution. If you are using the popular initiative, then you had better be the Mwananchi, the basic man on the street. I think Justice Wanjala said, was quoting Justice Madan and saying that is the man in the Pangani Matatu.
Yeah.
Pangani bus.
That's right.
If you want to do
an ordinary person.
An ordinary person.
Yeah.
So it was a very smart, if I can put it that way, smart way by the Supreme Court to do what they have to do, but also cause less pain. So I consider the judgment on the basic structure, doctrine, and an aesthetic to what they had to do in the rest of the ruling.
And it's interesting because we want to take a break now. That it was talked about as a foreign concept, and that it was a creation of the courts and that sort of thing. And by foreign concept, reference was made a lot to India and a case. I hope I say this right. Jamila will correct me. You speak fluent Gujarati.
Hindi.
For
yes.
those who Hindi.
Yeah.
Sorry, for those who don't know. So the case that they were referring to at the Supreme Court was the Keshavanda Bharati versus Kerala, 1973. The lady who speaks fluent Hindi will be talking about that and explaining what that is and why there was such reference in Hindi.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know who will translate. But let's take that break. When we come back, we'll talk about that case from India that was referenced quite a bit here and what it means. Jamila will be back with all of that. How do we say we'll be back in Hindi?
हम लोग वापस आ रहे हैं.
We're coming back. Now you can see the relationship between Jamila and Pili Pili.
Let's take the break. We'll be right back.